Okay, it looks like we have a full house, so we'll keep letting people through the door for this event, and we'll kick it off. Like I said, my name is Ainsley Keller. I'm the Sales and Operations Director for SK Global Software. Welcome to our second event in our summer webinar series. We will be doing these events all throughout the summer, and we've got some special content planned for you today. Let's hope you can see my slide switch over. Chuck, could you see that?
This switched.
High-tech software company here, folks. So here is the agenda for the entire summer. We expect you to come to all of our webinar events. We've switched them up between those folks that are in accounts payable. And then, of course, our credit card processing and AR team members will get a treat today. Our first webinar event was May 14th, and today we're focused on embedded credit card processing. So if you are here to learn about our solution around embedded credit card processing, you came to the right place. All of our events this summer are held on Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you see anything on this slide that you'd like to attend, you can go ahead and go out to our website and register for these events. They're all ready for you to sign up. All you have to do is go to sksoft.com/events, and you can register straight from the website. And if you have any questions about anything that you see today that Chuck shows you, or quite frankly, anything that we have presented in the past, or you see something that interests you and you have a question, just feel free to email sales@sksoft.com and we'll be happy to help you. If you are, if you don't know who we are, SK Global Software is the name of our company, and we are a Dynamics only ISV. So we're a company that keeps our heads down building products on the Microsoft Dynamics space, and primarily Microsoft D365. And for those of you who are using Dynamics AX 2012 today, some of the features and functionality that Chuck will show you is also available on 2012. If you're in the middle of transitioning to D365 and you'd like to put some of this in place before you go live on the cloud platform, that's okay too. But we'll be presenting the solution today in the latest Microsoft version of Microsoft Dynamics 365. And so what we're showing you today is a commercial configurable product that is certified and preferred by Microsoft today on their latest builds, and it's available in the AppSource marketplace. So we have been in business for over 25 years, and we're proud of the products that we release into the market, and have many, many customers and partners around North America and frankly around the world that use different modules in our stack. And so today we're going to focus on credit card processing. This is the last slide for today, and then we're going to jump into software. As some of you might know, we have two solutions that we offer that support various scenarios around credit card processing. The solution on the left here we call ePay Advantage. There's a separate webinar session that we're going to do around ePay, but this is for anyone in the AR team that would like to automatically send invoices to their customers and present a branded portal for those customers to see their invoices, to see all of their payment history, and you can allow your customers to pay online with a credit card or an e-check. And that automatically integrates back into AX and D365 and settles those invoices for you. So if you're looking for zero-touch AR, the ePay integration webinar will be later this summer, and we're looking forward to having you on that one. Today, we're going to focus on embedded credit card processing. So that product right there in the center, we call Credit Card Advantage. And that's what our senior solution architect today will be going over with you. So if you have any requirements around sales order processing, you're working in the call center, project service order integrations, or you have an e-commerce site and you need to have a streamlined, automated way to take credit card payments, and you want that to be done securely with the proper PCI compliance, the next 30 minutes is the right 30 minutes for you to be in. So we thank you for your time today. One of the solutions that we'll start out kind of focusing on is this PayFabric solution. You'll see this on the slide right in front of you, that logo. PayFabric is owned by a company called Notice Technologies, and they've been a Microsoft partner for many, many years. They have thousands of customers using their PayFabric solution today. And we chose to partner with them and integrate our IP to the PayFabric platform. And we did that because, of course, we have many customers that all use different payment processors and gateways. And so this way we don't force you to choose a certain gateway, as long as it's supported by PayFabric, and you can see a list of them there, then we can help you automate and secure your credit card transactions and still be built into AX and D365. So again, if you have questions about PayFabric after today's session, feel free to email us at sales@sksoft.com, and we're happy to answer those questions. And then while I hand it over to Chuck, you should see, and Chuck, I'm going to stop sharing here so that you can pull up your screen and introduce yourself. You should see a Q&A tool at the very bottom of your webinar screen today. So the Zoom tool is pretty cool. It's also fairly simple to use, and you can go there and enter questions anytime throughout the session today, and then we'll leave some time at the end to answer those questions. Thanks everybody for the time today. And Chuck, if you can introduce yourself so I know they can hear you, then we'll be good to go.
Hi there, yeah, I am Chuck Schrader. I am a Senior Solution Architect at SK Global, and I'll be doing the demoing today. So,
sounds wonderful. Thanks, Chuck.
Sounded all right? Okay, good.
Yep.
There's a few scenarios that the credit card processing is used and embedded inside of D365, and I'll go through a few of those today and show you what we can do. So the first scenario I was going to show is a customer payment journal scenario where we take a credit card inside a customer payment journal. So I'm going to just enter a new payment journal now. So this would be a case where you might have a customer that has terms or some other, non-credit card terms, I should say. And now you have an invoice hanging out that you've agreed to take credit card on. So I go find an invoice here, a pending invoice. Let's take this guy. And the key thing here is that we have a credit card method of payment, because that's what enables this process. So I had mine set up to fill my bank account in. When I click the credit card payment screen, I get this this new screen. So if I click credit card processing, if I click new, I'm sorry, and I can come down here and pick a credit card if I already have a credit card on file. And I had a couple from earlier, but what I'll show you is the ways to get the credit card. So in the credit card screen, we can enter a new card on behalf of a customer. So this would be if I am getting I'm talking to someone and they're telling me their credit card number over the phone. I can go into PayFabric and click create, and it'll bring up a dialog. Notice when this dialog comes up, this is not in the standard screen. This is in the a direct connection to the PayFabric vault. So we are never typing a full number inside of D365. We are always typing the number inside of a direct connection to the vault, a secure connection to the vault. In this case, I won't do that either, though. It's just another way to enter it. In this case, I'm going to back up one screen, and we're going to send a link out to the customer. So if I really want to kind of reduce or eliminate my back office PCI compliance scope, I don't want my back office people hearing a credit card number or typing it into their keyboards or having it go across my network. So what I can do is I can send out a pay link. So again, I wouldn't do this unless I don't have a card on file already. In this case, I will think that we don't have a card on file. As long as you have an email or a cell phone number, I can send this link out. So I'm going to go ahead and get this link sent. You can see that this shows that there's a pay link pending. So that tells you that a pay link was sent out for this particular transaction. And in a couple of seconds, the customer would get, and I just got it now, an email that you can design the template for. So these are all kind of substitutable pieces in an email template. So I'm going to click on this link. Again, this is your customers doing this on their own private PCs or their cell phone or whatever. So now I'm going to click Pay by Credit Card. And this way, the back office person never had to hear a number and never had to enter a number on your corporate network. So this takes your corporate keyboards, keyboard loggers, your network, all out of compliant, all out of PCI scope. So we'll put an email in here. And we will get rid of this for a second. So this was a customer basically entering this card. Back in D365, I have, there's a batch job running and seeing if these links get resolved or when they get resolved. So right now, this batch job didn't run yet. It still thinks it's pending. I'm going to kind of force the link to refresh so we don't have to wait for the batch job to run. So you can see just by refreshing and kind of forcing the batch job to run, it found that credit card transaction and at the pay link and included it into my file here. So if I look, I see I have a approved capture now. So now we have an approved transaction attached to this particular payment. If I go back to the screen, you can see that the payment status is now approved. So we use the payment status just like you would in a generate check on the accounts payable side. We use the payment status to make sure that the processes stay in sync. So if I have a $129 credit and I have a method of payment that reflects credit card, then I make sure I got a $129 charge accounted for before it lets me post this. So now I could post this. In my case though, I have my pay link set up. There's a parameter to set up that says when a pay link gets resolved, if that's the last thing holding up the payment journal from getting posted, then automatically post the payment journal. So in this case, I'm just backing up here and showing that this payment journal, not only did it go out and get the pay link, attach it to the payment in the payment journal, but it posted the payment journal for us as well. So again, that's an option, but if I'm in a clerk and in customer payment journal and send one of those links out, I don't need to necessarily wait for it to get resolved. In the background, the batch job could kind of do all those processes, I mean, attach it and post if I wanted it to. If you have a subscription billing or recurring invoice sort of scenario, there's also a process all credit cards. So that's a case where I would be typically building a payment journal with a proposal. So I build a payment journal and get a whole journal's worth of maybe recurring subscription invoices built in there. And then when I click process all credit cards, it goes out for each line in that payment journal. I didn't have to go in there and click that process credit card button. For each line in the payment journal, the process all card goes out and checks a couple things on the customer. It checks if they either have a default card, if they have multiple, or if they don't have multiple and only have one card, it'll just use that card. So it would go through and build a process credit card or run a process credit card transaction for every line in that payment journal. So if you're generating a payment proposal of 100 subscription invoices or recurring invoices, one click of process all cards, and it would basically charge all the cards in there and optionally then post the journal. when you're done as well. So for that, if there's any exceptions, the payment status would just remain none versus approved. So if there were any exceptions, it would be easy to go in and see which cards processed and which card did not. If there's any tech people listening, it does break it up into multiple jobs. So authorizing 100 cards could take a while, or charging 100 cards could take a while. So it does break it up into multiple jobs so that it can finish in a quicker time frame. So the payment journal, if I go in and typical question is about refunds. There's a couple ways to do refunds in this type of scenario. So if I go in and do lines and I put in, let's put in an account first. And we go with the debit amount instead. When I go to the credit card method of payment and click credit cards, you'll see that this automatically becomes a refund transaction. If I pick the card again here and pick the transaction to refund, so most gateways do not allow me to do a unreferenced refund any longer. So I can pick a transaction to refund and refund the transaction here as well. There's a second way. In this case, I settled an invoice. So I may want to go to the customer itself and find that transaction, because not only do I really want to refund the card, I probably want to unsettle the invoice associated with it. And we're taking a little time here, just painting the screen. But we've added on the customer transaction screen. So if I go to this again and go to transactions and find the payment. So if I find the payment, you'll see here there's now a reverse, well, this is not the one, but if there's a reverse credit card payment that can be used. And what that would do is unsettle the payment, or unsettle the payment from the invoice, and then also create a payment journal that reverses out the original payment and processes the refund. So it's kind of a one-click, if you're familiar with our one-click reversal in our AP payments, this is kind of the credit card version of the one-click payment reversal. We go in, let me go into the sales order screen next. So we go into sales order. That's kind of the second scenario. That's typically the more common scenarios for using the credit card. So I have a couple options here. So I'm just going to make a new sales order so we have something to work with. And we will do this again. And let me quickly steal something from another sales order to add to this. Just to get something, some value in this sales order. Now there's a couple things we can do with this is, first of all, we should go and make sure if we have a credit card terms or not, if this is going to process as a credit card transaction. So in this case, we have it set as a credit card transaction. There's no card number in here yet. If there was a default card for the customer, none of these are marked as default, but I could default the card in here. There's a couple scenarios though for this, if depending on if I already have a card on file or not. If I have a card on file, just like I did below, I could select that card and put it in here. You notice that the cards, the last four and the expiration date. So as I showed, either the customer's entering the card or we're entering it in a PayFabric a dialogue directly with the vault. So there's never a full number in here, and you can see it's just the last four, an expiration, and a tokenized version of the card. So again, never a full card number inside of D365. In this case, again, card on file or card not on file, I got a couple ways to kind of solve this. So if I go to manage, you see a send authorization pay link. If I did not have a card on file, much like I did in that, it's telling me I have one in the journal already, but I could send that link out and do the authorization and get the card information from the customer all at once. Again, then I wouldn't have to kind of see the number. I could go to the credit card screen and enter it on behalf of the customer, just like I showed in the other screen as well. And in this case, like I said, I have the card on file. So since we're talking to all the same PayFabric Vault, when Ainsley showed that slide at the beginning, where there was the customer invoice presentment and then the embedded processing, they're all pointing to the same vault. So if you employ or use both products, so the ePay and the Credit Card Advantage, which is what we're showing now, if customers were on the portal and entered a card, those would be visible here. Likewise, if you sent a link out to a customer and then later that customer went out to that portal, that card would be visible there as well. It's all the same vault and they all point to the same place. In this case, I have a credit card on file, and there's a couple things I can do as well. I want to maybe take a prepayment on this. So if I want to take a prepayment, maybe I'll take just a $20 prepayment. So since I have the card on file, I don't really need to send a link out to them. I can just immediately charge the card. So it's going out, charging the card, posting the corresponding journal and attaching that as a settlement. So if I look on this open transactions on this sales order, there is a settlement attached so that when I finally invoice, then the credit card will be, this payment will be subtracted from the invoice amount. During this process, normally, whether I take a credit card prepayment or not, as long as it's not all prepayment, if there are credit card terms associated with the sales order, we want to authorize that card at some point. The typical implementation is sometime before I start grabbing inventory, I want to make sure the card's going to support the transaction that I'm going to eventually invoice out of this. So I'll flip really quickly to the parameters in credit card. And there's a lot of kind of options that how you set this up and what you allow and don't allow. And we really do that. It seems like a lot of switches, but we do that because we really want to make the system configurable, not to where you have to customize it for your particular implementation. So the ones in particular, though, for around sales order is really how you want to authorize. And if you look at these first three options here, they're all kind of worded negatively, like disable versus enable. And that's because out of the box, these things would normally happen. So normally you'll always be allowed to manually pre-authorize. Normally you would be allowed to it'll authorize that pick or pack. In this case, we allow you to shut those off if you don't want to authorize that pick or pack. Some customers want to authorize that sales order confirmation, so we allow you to turn that off or on. It's off by default. Also, for the folks who have advanced warehouse implemented, a lot of times they want to, at release to warehouse, they want to authorize. So make sure before we send it out to the warehouse that we actually have a good credit card on file. So this allows you to basically identify what I'll call activation points for authorization. And depending on which of these activation points you have on, when the sales order process goes through one of those activation points, it checks for three things. The first is, do you have an authorization at all? If you have an authorization, is it for enough? And if you have an authorization, is it still valid? In other words, not expired or voided. So it basically does that check at whatever activation points you have enabled. So if I'm going to go do pick and I don't have an authorization or don't have one for enough, it'll automatically do the authorization and stop that step if I have that, that activation point turned on. So again, this gives you some control over when and how you want to run, when you want to do authorizations and kind of how you want to run your business relative to credit cards. So if I go back here, I'm going to take the easy way out and just authorize manually. So we will authorize now. So we had a $200 or $220 sales order. We had a $20 prepayment, so it authorized the rest. It always authorizes the entire amount of the sales order plus any padding that you establish. And by padding in AR parameters, there is a setting for credit cards that allows you to specify a percent up to a limit or a fixed dollar amount to always pad authorizations with. So if you have a scenario where you're authorizing the card, but yet you don't know some maybe shipping fees, for instance, then you can turn that padding on so that your original authorization is going to be for enough to cover not only the current sales order, but whatever incremental cost is going to be adding on a little later. So the authorization is always for the amount of the sales order plus any padding. In this case, it's the amount of sales order less settlements, that prepayment that's already attached. So I have an authorization. I would normally, again, go through pick or pack. It would kind of keep checking all along to make sure that I have the right authorization. If I would add lines, it's going to bump up the authorization. But eventually I'll get to the invoicing process. So if I go into invoice, and we will try to invoice this guy. So invoicing is going to do a couple things. It's first going to tell me I didn't print, which is okay. But it's going on to a couple things. It's, of course, generating the invoice, but it's also charging the card, generating the payment journal, and then attaching not only this credit card transaction, but the previous transaction as well to the invoice to settle the invoice. So if I go and look at that same authorization now, I will see that in authorization history, I not only have the original authorization is settled, now it's turned into a finalization, basically a capture against that authorization. So authorization, as most of you probably know, is just holding the money on the customer's credit card, much like checking into a hotel or reserving a rental car maybe. And then the finalization, the capture would be in more like the checkout of those processes. So if we go back and let's take a look at what happened on the client here. So we should be able to see what happened from an invoicing and from a settlement standpoint. Let's just take a look at customer transactions. So if we go down to customer transactions, we see the, let me scroll right so we can see some dates here. So we see the $220 payment that has a zero balance, and we also see, the invoice that has a zero balance, and we also see the $200 or the $20 prepayment and then $200 final payment settled against each other. So it created the invoice, settled them against each other, and again attached the prepayment and settled that as well. So from inside the sales order screen, we was able to not have to go out to the payment journal and do a prepayment, attach it to the sales order. Was able to do it all within that screen. So we'll back up to the sales order here. To undo these as part of a sales order process, the refund process is a little bit different. You're basically just running through the RMA process, the normal sales order RMA process. That process will undo the original, not undo it, but it will refund the original card that was attached to it. There's an option to change that method of payment if, for instance, that card is no longer valid, but normally it would just go through and refund the credit card as part of that process. I didn't go into the other ones on the list here, but I can kind of quickly show those. So projects, if you do deal with projects, you know that projects is not nearly as clean of a invoicing process, as nearly as I should say straightforward as invoicing process as a sales order. On a project invoice, there could be things coming from all over, so it doesn't really support the authorization piece very well, because I can't do 4 $20 authorizations and do a $80 capture against it. The credit card industry just doesn't really kind of support that sort of thing. But we do allow you to, at project invoicing, we allow you to change a method of payment to, or yes, a method of payment to credit card, and then immediately take a credit card payment at the project invoice proposal screen. In the particular case of project service order, if you start out as a service order and it becomes a project invoice, we do allow authorizations in that scenario. The authorization really just holds true only if the authorization is the only thing that kind of makes it to the project invoice. Again, if you start including things from a bunch of service orders and a bunch of other sources into a single project invoice proposal, then we can't really do anything with the original authorization. We will avoid that one and just recharge the correct amount. So project service order and project invoicing, there is support there. It just looks a little different than the sales order process in that, again, an authorization does not come through that process very cleanly just because of the nature of project invoicing. Sales order, if you do call center sales order, the dialogue looks a little different through that process, but it's the same process where it will authorize up front. There's on the complete dialogue there's a place to enter credit cards and authorize them, and then you would collect against them at the invoicing time as well. In any of those processes, I mentioned the authorization is always for the whole order amount in sales order or call center sales orders. The capture is always for what I'm invoicing right now. So if I'm in a sales order and I have I have 2 lines on the sales order, and I authorize up front, it's going to authorize for both lines. When I go to ship an invoice, if I ship just one of those lines in invoice, it will capture the payment for what I am invoicing right now, and it'll put a new authorization on the sales order for the remaining amount. So again, always authorizing for the whole sales order amount, or the sales order remaining amount, and always capturing exactly what I'm invoicing at the moment. So we have a couple of reports and inquiries as well. So we can see credit card history and SO confirmation history. So again, couple of inquiries that show you what has all, and we default this one to decline to kind of show you errors. But ways, especially if you have batch processing going on, if you're doing batch invoicing, ways to monitor if things are failing during that batch invoicing while allowing the rest of the batch invoicing to occur. This log will kind of capture what didn't work. And also, there are ways to avoid, we set flags on the original sales order in that case, so that if a capture fails, it doesn't keep retrying. It's if you, for instance, have batch invoicing running every hour or something like that, we want to make sure that we don't keep trying to recharge the same card over and over. So there's ways to set that up to avoid reauthorizing the same card over and over. I saw that there were some questions popping up throughout. I saw the Q&A dialogue go up. Ainsley, are there questions in the background there?
Oh yeah, Chuck, we're ready to throw questions at you.
All right, a little time, yep.
Okay, so Amanda asks if PayLink is available on project invoices.
That is a good question. We rolled that out. I can try to look while we're kind of maybe looking at other questions. We will look at that.
Okay. And you were just talking about, the reauthorization support, and is there a time limit for that authorization to remain outstanding?
Yes, so that's an easier question. So we will go to project invoice proposals here and kind of answer the first one, but while that's coming up. So in AR parameters, I just touched on those a little bit, but AR parameters has a few options that help control that process. So if we go to credit card here, number of days before expired. In reality, credit cards authorizations are really somewhat controlled by the issuing bank. So customer one and customer two walking in could have different authorization expirations. But this setting is you telling D365 when to consider something expired. I usually kind of put this on the longer end of like 3 weeks. That's about the limit of what those authorizations last. The danger of having it too short would be that you're reauthorizing something where the original authorization is still hanging out there and valid. So now you're kind of double holding a charge on someone, a hold on someone's card. That's why I kind of set it to the longer one. The danger of having it a little bit too long might be that your authorization is really void and you go to invoice and the customer somehow used up all that credit that you had reserved, and now you can't invoice. But 21 is what I've generally set it with our clients, and that's been working pretty well. This is also where that freight charge is set. So if I wanted to bump up freight, I can bump it up by 1% up to a fixed amount, or I can just set a fixed amount as well. Were there other ones beside that? I'm going to look at the project invoicing here. Oh, there we go, CC processing.
Is the solution available in just the US or available in the UK and the rest of Europe?
Okay. Yes. So the original slides that were shown, there was a lot of gateways on there. Some gateways are more global than others. CyberSource, WorldPay tend to work better in more countries. And then some of the others seem to be more US, Canada, and North America specific. But yes, we have clients, international clients.
So as long as your gateway supports those multi-currency and foreign transactions, then we can support you as well.
Correct. And to the first question here, I was kind of getting here. So I'm on a project invoice now, and the capture was there. I know that was on the schedule. I just didn't know if we got it there or not, but we did. So.
And this is, we support Credit Card Advantage on the latest build of D365 and all the way back, correct?
Yeah, so it was actually supported in 2012, some versions, and like I believe in our 8.5-ish sort of versions and up. I think the last 2012 version was maybe a 9.5. So it's supported on all those versions. If you're on an older 2012 version that you'd have to upgrade. It's been on all the D365 versions since one version. So if you basically are on Microsoft's one version plan, you're guaranteed to be on a version of Treasury Automation that supports it if you have our software.
Yeah, we also had a number of folks ask us if they could get a recording of the AP session. So you can either put that request in the Q&A so that we know that you're requesting a recording of the first webinar that we did May 14th, or you can send an email to sales@sksoft.com. We're going to stay on the line and continue to answer questions for a few more minutes. If we miss your question or you think of something after today, just feel free to send us send an email with your question. And we are recording this, so any attendees that showed up today, we will send you a copy of the recording as well. One of the other questions, Chuck, can we move our current cards over to this product? So transitioning current cardholder data.
Yes, so moving current cardholder data. Again, I probably should pull up that chart, the supported gateways. If you're on one of those gateways and staying on one of those gateways, the gateway is generally more cooperative about helping you do that because we need their help to do that. They're the only ones that have the full current numbers, but in general, the process is that our PayFabric Notice friends will give us a encryption key for you to give to your gateway. They send an encrypted list of full credit card numbers to PayFabric, and only PayFabric has the decrypt key. At that point, they will work with you and decide, do you want all these cards imported, or do you want some kind of a filtering process as to what cards get loaded? And also, if customer IDs between whatever system you're coming from and D365, for instance, if you're converting off another whole ERP and the customer IDs have some kind of a mapping because they changed, from one to another, then they would need that mapping, and if you want any data trimmed, and then they would load it in. The key there is getting your old gateway to cooperate. If we're just going from, let's say, Payment Tech, and now we're going through PayFabric to Payment Tech, we still need to run that conversion because we need PayFabric to be aware of the tokens. But Payment Tech is probably much more likely to be very cooperative throughout the process versus if, again, you're switching gateways at the same time. We've had gateways that aren't overly cooperative in providing that data.
Okay. Lisa asked a question about the credit card authorization, if it impacts credit check or credit holds.
It does not. Generally, well, it can. On the credit card terms, we generally tell it to bypass the credit hold because the authorization or not is going to kind of stop the process anyways. So there's a setting on the terms as to whether you want it to bypass credit check. And generally, we'd advise to set that to yes, because if they have authorization on their card and you can get a valid authorization on the card, you're going to get paid for that transaction. There's no, if the question is, does it automatically go out and on a decline, go out and set a customer to hold? It does not. Again, since the credit card's kind of running its own thread, it's kind of self-policing in terms of, is this transaction going to eventually go through or not? If you get a valid authorization, there's a very, very high chance, unless there's a long time between the authorization and the invoicing, it'd be a very high % chance that that transaction will go through. I had one on chat here, quick, Ainsley, about customer payment journal refunds.
That's the next one I figured if you read it, you probably could translate it better than I could.
Yeah, so on a customer payment journal refund, we let you type in the amount. There are times when you might want to partially refund or not. So we let you type in the amount and then choose the refund, choose the one that it's going to go against. If you're trying to over refund a card, then your gateway may or may not allow that transaction. We won't stop you from trying to do that, but the gateway can stop you from doing that. Likewise, just doing a refund without a reference in the first place, there is a parameter in our setup that allows you to do that. We recommend not allowing unreferenced refunds, but you can allow unreferenced refunds. We've had people use it maybe when they're converting from an old system, so D365 is unaware of the old transaction, so I have to allow an unreferenced refund. I will say that I know that some gateways in particular just flat out prohibit that and won't let you do it. Even if you set our parameter on, they'll just decline the refund transaction. But we don't force the amount of a refund to be equal to the, in the customer payment journal, to be equal to the original transaction.
And our good friend Sunil was asking, does PayLink require an additional fee on top of PayFabric subscription or the current credit card license? And today our Credit Card Advantage solution supports the PayLink and Wallet Link. The PayFabric subscription that you have there is an additional fee to support the pay link functionality there. Did I say that right, Chuck?
That was true. Just in the last few months, they do not charge any longer for the pay link functionality. It's just another transaction.
There you go. Good news, Sunil. So the PayFabric subscription that you have, you can run that pay link functionality there. Chuck, would he need to be on a newer build that supports PayLink if they have Credit Card Advantage already installed?
If they've already actually purchased PayFabric under an old plan, I would need to talk to the notice folks of whether they're kind of grandfathered into old pricing or if they get PayLink for free or not. You need to be on a PayLink was introduced in a relatively new build. I can find out that version, and that's for Sunil. I don't know what exact version PayLink was introduced.
Okay, so our release notes on the portal, we could look through and see what version PayLink supported on for him.
Correct. Yeah, we could look there.
We're right at 50 minutes, so we're going to give everybody 10 minutes of their life back, and really appreciate if your question was not answered. We have them logged through the webinar, so we'll make sure to send those to Chuck and get you all answers. If you think of anything after today's session, of course, you can send an email to sales@sksoft.com. Chuck, I don't know if you want to pull up that last slide if you have it handy, just so the folks can see the webinar dates for the next events. But you can also go to sksoft.com/events, and you can see all of the rest of the sessions that we have in June and all the way up to the end of July. So feel free to come register for some future events. And thanks everyone for your time today. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. Thanks everybody. And thank you, Chuck, for taking the time to present to us today.
Thanks everyone.
Yep, bye now.